Okay, so we're getting set up here for making empanadas. We got the tray with the parchment. We put them on for the go to the freezer. The savory dough, the bench scraper, paper towels, lots of flour, pieces, parts, and there we'll put up a recipe for this, but it's really kind of theme and variation, whatever floats your boat. So, how do we make empanadas? Okay, first thing when you're making empanadas, the trick is you roll them out one at a time. I don't know how the pros do it, but this is how I do it. And you take a chunk of dough.
About what size?
Oh, walnut size, give or take. Put it down there. It's a bit of a process. There we go. And then that goes in there. Now the trick is, and this is where your sous chef comes in, getting the right amount of filling. It's probably a bit much.
That's a bit much.
It's probably a bit closer.
That's still a bit much.
Yeah, anyway. Take some water, run it around the press, squish and squeeze, trim out the excess, save the scraps. The pie goes on to the freezer tray, and then you repeat another 23 times, give or take.
Okay.
And then eventually you work your scraps back into your dough. And one of the things, of course, you'll find is the dough gets a little bit more, it fights you a bit more as you continue to work it, which doesn't come as a surprise to anybody because we've all worked dough before and we know exactly how that works. But, and I tend to kind of like getting the dough fairly thin as I'm working with that. I'm getting really carte hours. Normally, when my cameraman, who's part-time sous chef, is working, I do the water on here before the filling. But as she's shooting pictures right now, that's not going to happen. And after you do a few dozen of these, oh, this comes really handy for doing that. And you work in a little bit of the scraps with it while you're at it. Oops, wrong one. And I generally find doing one like that and then rotating them 90 degrees helps to get this stuff to roll out nicely.
Sometimes sticks anyway.
Well, yeah. But that's what they make extra flour for. There we go. Okay, so normally we would do it this way. See? And of course this is around for that purpose. How's that, sous chef?
That's about right.
About right? Okay. Try
you don't want to overpack them so that they tear.
And try not to drop the knife on your feet. That's really, really bad. There we have our first 3 done. So now we're down to 21 left to go, or until you run out of dough.
Or until you run out of dough, which is going to happen before 21, I think.
So, you think?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Anyway, yeah, we'll see. Anyway, printed official recipe of what we're using for dough and stuff will be attached. Okay, so we came up one short of 2 dozen out of that little bit of dough. That was actually half of the dough recipe. So when the hurly-burly is over and the hurdy-gurdy is round or whatever it is, this where we go. We have more.
More is good.
More is good. So, anyway, we are not professional chefs. We are not professional empanada makers. Uh,
But we do pretty good.
yeah, not bad for a bunch of kids. So anyway, that's basically the process. And now we wait.
Freeze.
We freeze. Yes, they go into the freezer and then they go into Ziploc bags. Bye. Okay, the dough recipe is the same one we use for all the empanadas, pretty much whatever. Unless we're using fruit, in which case we have a sweet dough recipe, which we use. But other than that, it's the same one for all the empanadas. We find the savory works better with it. It is important to work it cold. It helps to roll out and everything is a little nicer. So divide it in half, makes it a little easier to work with, kind of flatten them into big pancakes and then put them in the fridge in saran wrap. Okay, this is the what we call pizzanadas, sort of our answer to those pitiful pizza rolls that you get in grocery stores, and they're much meatier and nicer. The one thing about both the pizzanadas and the chorizonadas is you can really use pretty much anything you want in them. And matter of fact, half of the fun of doing this is playing around with the recipe until you find something that you really, really like yourself. These work pretty good for us. I think we only ate about 4 dozen of them before we tweaked the recipe to our tastes. And once we got that done, we moved on to the chorizonadas, which is this one right here. The ground turkey makes for a little finer filling inside than the ground pork does. But because it doesn't have as much of its own flavor as the pork does, a lot of the spices and everything else come across a little more brightly. And this is the process. Other than that, like I said, it's our own little concoctions, and have fun making your own. Bye.